To make low-carb peanut butter cup, we need a container, but more importantly, chocolate. Not much though, just a bit, and you'll see why shortly. To melt chocolate, he could use a double boiler, but if you follow Black Tie Kitchen on Instagram, you know he's not very good at that. So he is trying a method he came up with. If someone else has already thought of it, kudos to you, friend. Let me know who down in the comments below. Utilizing his immersion cooker inside a cooler, he lowers his chocolate in, sets the temperature to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and adds a tablespoon of coconut oil to aid in the melting process, all of which are mistakes in tempering chocolate. After about 20 minutes or so, the chocolate has melted. Using a fire hydrant red silicone mold, he grabs a pan to aid in the stability. This way the mold will not bend and fold to the will of gravity. Then, using a teaspoon measuring utensil, he pours out the chocolate into each cup. Equality for all. Nice and even. Any residual is consumed. The chocolate line mold is then taken to the icebox. It will reside there until the chocolate has cooled enough to harden, if he can manage to fit it. When he returns, he removes the mold from the icebox, and for the peanut butter, he chooses fresh ground, which consists solely of ground peanuts. You could also use almond butter, but it's a peanut butter cup, so no. He chooses a quarter teaspoon to err on the side of caution. Although he prefers more peanut butter rather than less, he doesn't want a peanut butter mush slide. Using a spoon, he carefully measures out enough PB into the mold. Eventually, he switches to his finger for speed.
I'm gonna be honest, this is a lot of work considering I'm probably gonna eat these within a span of 10 minutes.
This then goes into the freezer for at least 20 minutes. In the meantime, using a metal bowl, he opens a bag of Lily's dark sugar-free chocolate chips and pours it in. Then in a pot he adds about an inch deep of water. Not too much, not too little. Using foil of the aluminium, he molds a piece into a sort of log shape. He creates 4 of these and folds them over the lip of the pot. Then he nestles the bowl on top, like a chicken on her roost. He brings his mellow concoction to the stovetop where it's placed over a burner and the water is brought to a simmer, and the bowl to its roost. The aluminium logs will allow steam to escape, providing better temperature control in the melting of the chocolate. That is, in theory. In reality, he should just use a thermometer. Overheating chocolate will ruin the temper. He removes the half-made cups from the freezer and reconvenes at the kitchen counter. Using a spoon for lack of a better tool, he tops the cups with the freshly melted chocolate. However, compared to the first batch, this chocolate has the viscosity of lava, due to the lack of an additional fat source. He painstakingly tops the cups and pats them all down to even out the chocolate. Then, back to the icebox it goes, for completion. He forgets about the cups and returns a few days later. They appear to be thoroughly frozen. He works quickly to remove them from the mold before his body temperature melts them into a sinful sensation. Pushing from beneath, he pops them out and places them aside. These are rock hard and have the potential to break a teacup from afar, so there is temper.
So I want to see if these are shelf stable, so I'm going to leave these here and let them get to room temperature and see how they behave.
After allowing the cups to temper for 30 minutes, he hand selects the most representative cups from the group and places them on the metal stage for judgment. The ones with plenty of peanut butter simply slide around, which is not good. The others melt to the plate and are poorly tempered, as evidenced by the chalky color of the second layer of chocolate, albeit they are still rather tasty. Downtrodden, he contemplates improvements.
There's a couple things we can try.
Once more, he prepares his temperature-controlled chocolate tempering station. This time, he adds more chocolate than the last and sets the temperature to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, unnecessarily, cuts and fits a piece of parchment paper to a glass container. He spreads a giant glob of peanut butter onto the paper to create a sad and thin peanut butter brick. Using a spoon, he attempts to make it as even and flat as possible. It is placed into the container and placed into the freezer. The hope is that it hardens enough to manhandle. Then he checks on his chocolate. After 20 minutes or so, it has melted into a silky smooth texture. So he lowers the temperature to 91 degrees Fahrenheit to allow the chocolate to recrystallize. Or so he believes, since it never quite gets there. The peanut butter is removed from the freezer and using a sharp cutting tool, he cuts it into small squares, making sure to clean up the edges. Since it has begun to melt, he places it back into the container and tops it with another piece of parchment paper and 3 of his signature clear ice cubes. Back to the freezer it goes. Meanwhile, he pours his base layer of chocolate into the mold.
Alright, so it's ready.
He does the hokey pokey and turns himself around to place the chocolate back on the tray and into the freezer, alongside the nut butter. The mold and peanut butter are removed from the cold depths of the icebox. Using his hands, he breaks apart the peanut butter squares he previously cut. Then, using kitchen tweezers, he carefully peels squares off and places one into each cup. Although not a perfect fit, they should suffice. He can also double up at the sides against it. Afterwards, he drizzles the remaining warm chocolate over top to complete the peanut butter encased cups. Using flaky sea salt, he sprinkles it over the top of some of the cups to create variation. For science. Theoretically, the salt should contrast well with the sweetness of the peanut butter and the chocolate, but for now, we can only hypothesize. For the next variation, he adds a significant amount of the peanut paste to a bowl, and adds melted chocolate. Then he simply mixes in a clockwise manner. This variation is to determine if simply mixing the ingredients will yield the peanut butter cup that is comparable without all the fuss. He taps to even out, and once more, it's time to let them cool. Therefore, back to the icebox they go again. Some chocolate remains, so he ponders what to do with it, and has an idea. Using a different mold, he adds the remaining chocolate and smashes up spicy pork rinds. Then he sprinkles the dehydrated swine skin over top like a sort of carnivore confetti. This too is set aside to cool, and he cleans, because ants. After another chilly hour, he removes both chocolate molds from their icy too. He lays out a large piece of parchment paper and begins removing the chocolate from the red housing. His warm touch is detrimental, and therefore kept to an absolute minimum. As the cups are lined up like toy soldiers, they prepare for the final test and their eventual fate. The first fate is of the peanut butter mixed with the chocolate. Although pretty to the eyes upon touching, it is incredibly soft. This variation would work best as a fat bomb that resides in the refrigerator.
Not a Reese's peanut butter cup, but good.
The second test is of the original peanut butter cup copy. It has a smooth and shiny finish, and when squeezed, it holds its own weight and does not budge. Much like a regular peanut butter cup, it eventually melts in your hand.
Of course it's good.
The third fate is of the regular peanut butter cup with the addition of flaky sea salt. Although it could use a bit more peanut butter, this variation was superior to the OG.
I never thought I'd say I don't like eating this much chocolate.
The fourth and final fate is of the rind abomination. Strong in the hand and gleaming under light, it appears promising. Upon tasting, it is promising.
I think this is my favorite.
And it doesn't even have peanut butter.
Now the question becomes, are any of these shelf stable? Like, can we leave them out, take them to work, and have to keep them in the fridge? I think the ones that we made, with peanut butter inside, these would be the most shelf stable. Because see, they only melt when we touch them. They don't slide, but they're soft. So I think these might be the best for that, but it's a lot of work. The one where we mix peanut butter together,
Not at all. And that's how you make a low-carb peanut butter cup. What is that? Is that? Zoom in. What in the Queen's name is that?
what the